On December 17, 1944, in the frozen expanse of the Ardennes forest, Belgium, a German soldier named Hans Müller wrote in his diary that the Americans were unlike the Russians. He noted that American artillery was something else entirely. It was not just the terrible volume of fire, but the speed, the accuracy, and the horrifying knowledge that there was no time to react. One moment there was silence, and the next, the world simply exploded. Müller's battalion, part of the 6th SS Panzer Army, had just launched Hitler's last major offensive in the West, achieving complete surprise. They were confident until the American artillery found them. What German soldiers in the snow-covered forests did not realize was that they were facing the most lethal artillery system deployed in the war, a system so devastatingly coordinated that it would break the back of Germany's final gamble and expose the true depth of American military superiority. This terrifying difference had been apparent long before the Battle of the Bulge. German veterans transferring from the Eastern Front, where they faced brutal Soviet bombardments, carried assumptions forged in years of desperate fighting. They had learned to survive Russian artillery. Soviet procedure required firing ranging shots, which provided German troops with precious seconds to seek cover. The patterns were predictable, allowing movement between barrages. Furthermore, the fire direction was slow, often taking 10 to 15 minutes from observation to impact. The Americans changed everything. Gefreiter Otto Schmidt, a veteran of 2 years on the Eastern Front, was captured in North Africa in 1943. He recounted a moment near Tunis when his company felt secure in a wadi, believing the Russians would have needed hours to find and range their guns. Then a small aircraft, an unassuming plane no bigger than a reconnaissance craft, puttered overhead at a low altitude. They ignored it, assuming it was unarmed and only conducting photography. 3 minutes later, without warning, without ranging shots, the entire wadi erupted. Shells landed simultaneously, air bursts above them, and ground bursts among them. In 30 seconds, the company of 123 men ceased to exist as a fighting unit, leaving only 11 survivors. That small aircraft was the L-4 Grasshopper, the American Forward Observer's flying platform, which became one of the most feared aircraft in the German military. It carried no weapons of its own, but its appearance meant that American artillery was about to turn the position into a killing ground within minutes, or even seconds. Even experienced German artillery officers, like Lieutenant Friedrich Bauer, initially dismissed captured American procedure documents as mere propaganda. Yet near Sarno, he witnessed an American Grasshopper appear, and before his crew could even compute counter-battery firing data, American shells landed with precision on each gun. Bauer realized the Americans had calculated solutions, coordinated multiple batteries, and delivered simultaneous fire in less time than it took his own forward observers to radio map coordinates. The secret lay not in a single innovation, but in a comprehensive system that seamlessly integrated technology, training, and an industrial capacity Germany could never match. The foundation of this system was the Fire Direction Center, or FDC, a concept that revolutionized artillery employment. While German batteries calculated firing solutions individually, American batteries fed all data to a central FDC, which could coordinate fire from dozens of batteries simultaneously. The FDC relied on pre-computed firing tables. In offices across the United States, thousands of hours were spent by people using mechanical calculators and slide rules to compute firing solutions for every variable, including wind, temperature, humidity, barrel wear, and altitude. These tables allowed American officers to calculate precise solutions in minutes. A captured German professor of mathematics, Hedman Vera Hoffmann, confirmed that the Americans had done the complex mathematics in advance, so in the field, they simply looked up the answer. This allowed for the true revolution in fire, time on target, universally known as TOT. TOT coordinated fire from multiple batteries at different ranges, ensuring that all shells arrived simultaneously, typically within a 3-second window. The psychological and physical effect was catastrophic. There was no warning, no gradual build-up of fire, one instant silence, the next dozens of shells detonating at once. Troops whose survival depended on dropping prone at the first explosion had no time to react, maximizing casualties. Stabsfeldwebel Kurt Zimmermann, a survivor of a TOT strike, wrote in his diary, "It is not artillery as we understand it. It is something new. You hear nothing, then the world ends." He described airbursts and ground bursts arriving in the same second, killing men in all positions. You were simply alive one moment and wounded or dead the next. The speed of the American response, which was routinely 3 minutes compared to the Germans' 8 to 10 minutes, was shocking. This was due to the widespread deployment of new, clear FM radios, which contrasted sharply with the static-plagued AM radios primarily used by German forces. Moreover, the Americans integrated their artillery and infantry. American forward observers were specially trained personnel who moved with the infantry. A single lieutenant or captain could call upon the fire of the entire corps artillery, coordinating dozens of batteries in minutes, delivering the equivalent weight of a small airstrike but more accurately and rapidly. Colonel Heinrich Müller, whose regiment was destroyed near St. Lo, reported that a single surrounded American company held his entire regiment for 6 hours. He estimated the forward observer commanded more firepower than his entire regimental artillery, causing 400 casualties to his 120 American opponents. The mobility of the American guns further demonstrated their industrial superiority. The standard M2A 105mm howitzer was produced to precise tolerances, with over 8,500 units manufactured by the end of the war. Each infantry division had 36 of these guns. Crucially, they were fully motorized, towed by trucks or half-tracks, allowing them to move at highway speeds. This meant American batteries could displace from a firing position in 20 to 30 minutes. The German Wehrmacht, despite its mechanized propaganda, remained predominantly reliant on horses. German artillery pieces required 6 to 8 horses and took 2 to 3 hours to limber and unlimber. A German soldier named Paul Richter recorded watching an American battery fire its mission, hook up to trucks, and depart in 20 minutes, an evolution that would take his horse-drawn battery at least 2 hours. He concluded, "We were fighting a 19th century war with horses against an enemy fighting a 20th century war with trucks. The outcome was inevitable." Beyond the divisional guns, the M155mm howitzer provided heavy support, firing a 43-kilogram shell over 14,000 meters, with over 10,300 produced during the war. The final and arguably most decisive piece of technology was the variable time fuse, or VT fuse, also known as the proximity fuse. This technological marvel contained a miniature radar transmitter and receiver in the nose of the shell. When the shell approached the ground or any object, the reflected radio signal triggered detonation at the optimal height for maximum lethality, typically 10 to 20 meters above the ground. The VT fuse was a game-changer because it eliminated the need for complex, time-consuming calculations of conventional time fuses. It increased artillery effectiveness against troops in the open by 200 to 700%. Troops who had learned to survive conventional artillery by seeking shallow depressions were now killed by fragments raining down vertically from the shell exploding above them. Hans Müller, the soldier from the Ardennes, called them demon shells. He noted that men in foxholes, who should have been protected, were killed by fragments that fell vertically. This systemic superiority created a tactical dilemma for German commanders. Concentrating forces to generate combat power immediately made them a target for devastating American fire. But dispersing forces meant they lacked the strength to win battles. Either choice led to defeat. The Ardennes offensive was meant to be executed under fog and overcast skies to neutralize American air power. The planners had correctly assessed the air threat, but they had fatally misjudged the power of American artillery, the all-weather weapon. Once the weather broke and American artillery resupply and fire intensified dramatically, German units were trapped. Colonel Müller, commanding a replacement regiment during the Bulge, provided a stark final assessment. "We were defeated by American artillery before we were defeated by American infantry or armor." He observed that the Americans defeated the Wehrmacht through sheer industrial might, able to fire 100 shells for every one the Germans could afford. By 1944, German artillery batteries were often operating at half strength due to a lack of replacements, and ammunition production had collapsed. German batteries were sometimes limited to a mere 2 to 3 shells per gun per day. American batteries, by contrast, faced no such restrictions, and forward observers could call for fire freely, knowing the supply was effectively unlimited. This systemic approach to warfare, what General Franz Halder, the former chief of the German General Staff, called the most decisive factor, was something Germany never matched. For the German soldier, the fear was simple. It was not the tanks, the aircraft, or the infantry that brought nightmares. It was the American artillery, the unbridgeable gap between German methods and American industrial and organizational power. The story of American artillery is the story of how industrial power, when applied systematically, transformed the battlefield and secured a total victory.